Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name's Corinne, and here we talk about all things book, reading, writing, topics related to those things. You get the gist. Last week, I did a video all about rereading books and gave you 7 reasons why I think it's a good idea. I confess that I am a chronic rereader and always will be, as well as a chronic rewatcher of films and replayer of games. It's just like in my brain chemistry to do that, I guess. This week, I'm going to talk about some of the books that I chronically reread and also some books that I want to reread and why. I've got quite a big stack here, so I'm going to be fairly quick fire about it. Buckle up, get ready. First on the list, for some reason, is Heartland by Lauren Brooke. I have this whole 22 book series. It's an old scholastic, middle grade, really thin, very short book series all about horses and this girl who loses her mum in the first book, and her mum is like this horse trainer who is a bit of a horse whisperer. She kind of follows in her mum's footsteps and keeps the business going. It's like a family drama. There's like family and friends and petty rivalries. Lots of like amazing stories about horses with problems and their riders and how she helps them and how it helps her. And this is adapted into a series which is on CBC. It's Canadian. The book is actually set in West Virginia, but it's this Canadian series. I think it's been going on for 20 seasons, 21 or 22. It's like the longest running family drama ever. And I love it. I'm a few seasons behind, but I need to catch up. And the book series pretty much only covers the first season of the show, so the show's well surpassed this by this point. But I quite like to go back and reread the books, or at least like one or two of the books. For those that don't know, I'm actually an equine behaviourist professionally, and this book is part of the reason why. It's why I wanted to be an equine behaviourist as a child. Kind of lost my way with it, like on my way to adulthood, and then found my way back. However, there's actually a lot of flaws with this book series and the TV show now that I am practicing as an equine behaviourist. I'm very science based and very ethical, and a lot of what's in this book is natural horsemanship, Monty Roberts inspired, which isn't very ethical, can be quite punishing for the horse. It kind of camouflages under the guise of being about, how horses behave naturally and kindness and compassion and all of those kind of things. And the books are very much like that. It kind of helped me to adopt wanting to be compassionate and wanting to have a partnership with horses. So it inspired me in a lot of positive ways. But it also misinformed me, like had me doing join up with my horse, which probably stressed her out and wasn't very positive for her, even though I thought it was magical and all of those things. The TV show as well, it goes very much into like rodeo culture, and that's kind of not great for calves. I know it's a very cultural thing, and that culture of people are not going to be happy with me talking shit against it. But I think while the books and the show sanitizes it for like a family friendly audience and for a young audience, the reality is that the welfare for the horses and the cattle for some of these things, some of these activities in the rodeo are not so great and are abusive, and there's a lot of problems with that. So learning what I learned and doing what I do now has kind of spoiled my enjoyment of the show and of the books, but it is quite a big part of like what got me into it in the first place, and it was a gateway and it got me onto the right track even with some misinformation. So I also have a lot of gratitude and respect for the book series and love it despite its flaws. So I'd quite like to reread it now as an adult and as a professional equine behaviourist with like a strict code of ethical conduct, and see what there is to still praise about the book and see, if any of it's redeemable or if this is just like not compatible with my current practices at all. I'd be interested to see. It would be an interesting exercise for me, both personally and professionally. Moving on, because that wasn't quickfire at all, and I said it was going to be quickfire. I'm going to speed up. Next, I want to reread, and I already have reread this twice, Pigeon English. This book is sensational. It was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize in 2011. It's about a young African boy who emigrates to UK, London, I think, with his family. They're illegal immigrants. There's a lot of really harrowing aspects to this story, but it's told through this boy's perspective, and I think he's 7 or 9. So For example, he watches family members of his burn their fingertips off on the stove in order to like mask their fingerprints so that they can't be deported. Things like that, very dark. They also live in poverty in the working class area of London. There's high knife crime, there's racism and bullying, and then this little boy is just a ray of sunshine. He's, happy to be where he is despite the circumstances. I think he's even naive to the circumstances. It's not poverty to him, it's just new, it's just different. He's naive to some of the dangers, and this book like broke my heart. It was very heartbreaking. It has a sad ending, but it was really powerful, and I've forgotten a lot of aspects of this in the plot. So I think enough time has passed for me to give this a reread, and it feels really topical given that illegal immigration is quite a hot topic at the moment and subject to debate. I think this story brings a lot of humanity to the conversation, and it's affected me before, and I'm ready to be affected by it again. And I think more people should read this. So if you've not heard of it, pick it up. It's amazing, but get the tissues ready. I also want to reread Memoirs of an Imaginary Friend. This was so unique and so interesting. It's from the point of view of an imaginary friend, and he is the imaginary friend of a boy with autism. Most of the children kind of forget and move on from their imaginary friends, like at a certain kind of age, 5 or 6. And when they forget completely about their imaginary friend, they cease to exist. This boy, because he's autistic, I think he's about 10 or 11 in this story, and he still has his imaginary friend. These imaginary friends aren't actually imaginary, they're real kind of beings that's existence depends on the belief of children. They're also like modeled completely how the children create them. So there's this weird higgledy piggledy kind of girl who's called Graham because children give their imaginary friends really random names. There's this little dog called Puppy who's really cute. He's a little imaginary friend. I can't remember much about the main imaginary friend, but he's again, I kind of imagined him as like a higgledy piggledy Pixar character almost. It's very much like the imaginary friend in Inside Out and how he gets forgotten at a certain point. If you like Inside Out and that heartbreaking sequence, this book's kind of like that, but it also gets really dark. So this autistic child in this story actually finds himself in quite a lot of danger. He ends up getting abducted, partly because of his autism and his inability to realize the danger he's in. He ends up in a dangerous situation, and this imaginary friend does what he can in his capacity as an imaginary friend to try and help this boy. And this book was sensational. It really captivated me. I think I read it really quickly, and now I'm struggling to remember a lot of details of the plot and what happens in the end. So I'm ready to give this a reread. And to be honest, I only read it in like 2022, and it's now 2026. So it's only been 4 years, but in that time, I've forgotten a lot of it. So, like I said last week about how your memory isn't as good as you think it is, like it really isn't. And again, if you're looking for book recommendations, read this, you will not regret it. I also want to reread The Science of Storytelling by Will Storr. This taught me a lot about writing. It goes a lot into the sacred flaw. And other than that, I cannot remember much of this book at all. I just remember it being really helpful and it shaping a lot of my design of my current project. Once I've finished my first draft, I'm definitely going to reread this right before I get back into the review and making the story not suck. This book uses a lot of the science and psychology of readers to help you construct a story based on how people think and how minds work. So, as someone that studied psychology, has a psychology degree, this is like right up my street. Speaking of psychology, another non fiction book along that category that I want to reread is Love's Executioner and Other Tales of Psychotherapy by Irvin D. Yalom. This is Dr. Yalom's account of like 10 different patients that he delivered psychotherapy to. They were all really interesting case studies, and his musings on them and their issues was really fascinating. And now I can't remember the majority of it. I read it 4 or 5, maybe 6 years ago, and I feel like I've learned a lot about psychology, mainly equine behaviour, but also human behaviour change and things like that since then. So I'd quite like to reread it as someone that's like developed some more skills and has become more of an adult, I'd like to see if my perspective has changed on Dr. Yalom's perspective on these patients, but also on the patients themselves. I'd recommend it if you're interested in such things, but bear in mind it might be like a little bit triggering. And the final non-fiction I want to reread is The Pig That Wants to Be Eaten and 99 Other Thought Experiments. This is just, yeah, like 100 thought experiments. And Gillian Baggini kind of reasons through each of the experiments using different concepts from philosophy. I studied philosophy at university in like first and second year and find it really interesting. I think this book, it's really fascinating to read the thought experiments and kind of puzzle them through for yourself before reading what famous philosophers and their perspectives would say regarding that thought experiment and how they would kind of solve it. As a result, it kind of gives you a good overview of all of the main philosophers and their perspectives and how they kind of tackle these kind of problems. And this writer writes about philosophy in a very accessible way. So I would like to reread this one day because I really enjoyed it the first time around, and I want to test my brain again now that I've forgotten most of it again. Next, this is a book I've reread the most. I think I've read it 12 times. It's Solitaire by Alice Oseman, and this is like a new hardback copy that I've not read. There's an old copy up there which is battered and bruised from the abuse that I've shown it over the years. And like, I'm obsessed with this. I love it. Even though it's quite young for me at this point, it's kind of based in high school. I read it when I was not long out of high school, and now I'm like 32. But it brings me back to that time. It brings me back to all of the times in which I reread this. It's a total comfort read. It's flawed, but I love it. And I like Tori and Michael as main characters. They're so endearing. I'm just obsessed with this. And if you like Heartstopper, the comic books or the TV series, Heartstopper kind of skips over this story. It kind of occurs in the winter of Volume 4, I want to say. And it's Tori's story. It doesn't rehash the events of Heartstopper very much, but it kind of gives you a lot of context about Nick and Charlie if you love them, as we all do. There's also a couple of novellas, This Winter and Nick and Charlie, which are more centered on Nick and Charlie. This Winter kind of covers Tori, Charlie, and their little brother Oliver. So if you're a fan of the series, read this book. This is the one that started it all, that Alice wrote when she was like 16. So bear that in mind, but you will like this. But it is a bit more depressing than Heartstopper because Tori is quite the Wednesday Addams of a character. Next, Looking for Alaska by John Green. Mentioned it in my other video about why I like to reread this book, how it helps me process grief, especially the kind of grief that mirrors the grief in this novel. Over recent years, I've watched the series 2 or 3 times, and when I've wanted to reprocess grief, I've done it via watching the series. I haven't actually reread this book in a really long time, so I would like to do that. Also, I hate this cover. Really should buy a new copy with a better cover because what is this heart? What is this water? This is ugly as fuck. But it's mine. It's my sentimental copy. So I'm fond of it from that perspective. But I think even the cover with the candle is better than this, honestly. Then I want to reread The Hunger Games. Spoke about it at length in the last video about how many times I've reread it, like 10 times, and why I like rereading it, what it kind of brings to me as a writer, as someone that's writing in the same genre. I reread it in 2020 during COVID. It was a great time. It's been 6 years now, so I think we're due a reread, although I don't think I'll do it for a little while yet. But I think this series is something that I'm just going to reread at certain intervals forever for the rest of my life. And I accept my fate. I volunteer as tribute. Another young adult like genre fiction that I want to reread is The Fifth Wave and also the 2 sequels. I reread this one quite a lot, and I think the second one. Only read the final book once, and I can't remember for the life of me what happens. This, I remember being so captivated by it, thinking it was really well written, has multiple perspectives, and the twists and turns were excellent. It's kind of about aliens invading. There was a movie with Chloe Grace Moretz in it, which was okay. The book's much better. It's about aliens invading Earth and them attacking and depopulating the humans within fifth waves. We're now on the fifth wave. Our main character loses her little brother, who is taken away to be in a military base, and she has to go and find him and rescue him, basically. But there's lots of other twists and turns and other characters that we follow. It's amazing. If you've not read it, read this series. I also want to reread a couple of Holly Bourne's young adult books. I want to reread Am I Normal Yet? Because I remember really enjoying it. It's about a girl with OCD. And I feel like I know a lot more about OCD now. I've had more education in it. So I kind of want to reread it and see how accurate it was. I think she'll have done her research in order to portray it well. So I'm not questioning it. I just kind of want to reread it as an adult and see what I think. And I also want to reread her manifesto on how to be interesting as an adult. I think I've read it more than once, but there's a lot about this book I can't remember. I remember that the main character has like an inappropriate relationship with a teacher. That might be strange to read about from an adult's perspective. I think this book's going to be a lot more disturbing to read as an adult, but I'm intrigued. And I also have a novel idea that is similar to this, like this idea of doing certain things in order to become a certain kind of person and having kind of social experiments to do with that. This book is kind of like that. She wants to become more interesting, and so she adopts certain behaviors and certain characteristics and really changes her life in order to like become a popular girl. My book idea isn't about that specifically, but it's in a similar vein. So that's partly why I want to reread this and see how this was done, because I really can't remember. Another one I want to reread is I'm Not a Number by Lisa Heathfield. Spoke about this in my like young adult recommendations video. Go and watch that one if you've not watched it yet. But this is about a prison camp. It's kind of modern day UK. There's like two very black and white political parties, and one starts rounding up supporters of the other and putting them into camps. Very reminiscent of Nazi Germany. And I remember at the start of this book thinking, oh, it's quite simplistic, but it ended up really getting me in a chokehold. It ended up being quite impactful. And the book I'm currently writing is also kind of set in a prison camp. Very similar vibes to this, so I'd quite like to give this a reread and just remind myself how Lisa Heathfield tackled this kind of setting, kind of for research purposes, but also because I really did enjoy this book and want to experience it again, even though it was kind of harrowing. Now we're going to take a turn down like the middle grade aisle. I want to reread Siberia. I recently got my mum to bring all my stuff from Glasgow down to where I live now that I've bought a house, which included a lot of middle grade books. And this one, I can't remember much about it at all. It's in Siberia, there's a winter tundra, there's a girl, I guess, by the cover. They have these weird little creatures that follow them, and that's the only thing I can remember about it. But it sounds intriguing. It's kind of a middle grade of fantasy. It sounds very different. And like, I don't know why this book specifically, but for some reason, I just want to reread it purely because I can't remember anything about it at all. And I have like no memories or preconceived notions of what it was like and whether I liked it or not. I'm just curious. So this is a bit of a rogue choice. And this book is probably so old, I wonder if it's even for sale anymore. I don't know, but I'm intrigued. I think I will reread it at some point, but I don't know when. Subscribe to find out if I ever do, I guess. A book that I've reread a lot is Warhorse. Again, probably this is one that I'm going to reread for the rest of the time because I love it so much and it's so important. But I haven't read it in years and years. The movie came out in like 2014 or something, and there's a play. I've seen the play, but I haven't physically read the book for a long time. And it's a short, easy read. Obviously, I'm an equine behaviourist, very into horses, etc. So, seeing stories from the horse's perspective is obviously something I'm interested in. Interested to read it like as a professional now, knowing what I know, to see like how much anthropomorphism is in here and how accurate it is to like a horse's real experience as far as we know. Not to criticize it, just out of interest. I think anthropomorphism in this kind of context, in order to like boost empathy and compassion for horses, especially in war where they suffered a lot and really served our country and like paid a price for it. I think actually having people recognize that and acknowledge the contribution that horses made and the cost that they paid, I think that is overall a good thing. So I think I can forgive the anthropomorphism in this because the outcome is really positive. Another young adult novel that I've reread many times via audiobook is The Windsinger. I think I've reread it physically and many, many times on audiobook. And I don't know if I'll ever physically reread it, but I will be re listening to the audiobooks at some point in the near future because I love them. And I forget so much about this series. I don't forget the first book very much. Like, I think this is imprinted on my brain because I listened to it so much. But the sequels, my memory is a little bit vaguer of. I'd also quite like to get the audiobooks. Haven't listened to them before, but in order to reread Wolf Brother, which I'm probably not going to sit down and physically reread, I'd like to get the audiobooks and do it that way because I remember enjoying this story, but I don't know if as an adult I will. It's something I'm curious about, and I think it'll be a nice, easy, and comforting audiobook. And finally, the last book I've reread to death and probably will forever is Noughts and Crosses. Haven't read it in maybe 10 years, maybe 8 years, but I have reread it like 6 or 7 times. Love it, think it's fantastic, but interested to read it as like a proper adult now that my frontal lobes have closed and now that I am like much older than the characters, even in their like old counterpart. I think they're like 18, 19, 20 at the end of this novel. So it'd be interesting to read this now as a 32-year-old adult. However, I don't think I'll reread the sequels because I don't remember them being that good. It's the first one that really has me in a chokehold. Anyway, that's everything that I reread like crazy, and also some things that I want to reread and plan to reread at some point. Let me know if there's anything that you chronically reread in the comments, and if there's anything on your list that you would like to reread. Subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. I put out videos pretty much every Tuesday, and follow me on Instagram. I might just follow you back. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!